All right, well, welcome to another episode of the It's Mimic podcast, where I, Megan, sit down with a couple of other amazing ladies to dig up the dirt on the Undead and Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. For this episode, I've resurrected Casey and Pepperina as we can sink our teeth into this episode called What's in Your Head? In Your Head. Yeah, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I think my computer asked if I was playing music. Yes!
Nailed it 100%. This episode on It's a Mimic channel is bursting at the seams with lore and special mechanical details about some of the most grotesque undead out there, zombies. So reload your shotgun and dim the lights as we summon forth details, opinions, and inspirations about these undead horrors.
I know that there have already been 3 episodes on zombies in the standard podcast, episode 36, 109, and 110. But I'm glad that we are finally getting a chance to get into them. We're not going to get into all the different kinds in that episode, but before we rip into the meat of this topic, I thought I should break down the basic zombie so we have some context.
You absolutely should. What is a zombie?
What is a zombie? These can be found in the monster manual, way in the back because it's alphabetical. Getting into the lore of the base zombies, there are 4 standard features. Dark Servant, D&D zombies are created from necromantic magic, making them servants to whomever resurrects them. The zombie has no memories of its old life and has no real thoughts or imagination. If they are left without an order from their master, they will simply stand in place, only attacking whatever wanders in their area. Their second feature is hideous forms. Zombies typically appear as they did in life, just grosser. The rot and decay take a bit of time to really set in, but if your zombies have just arisen, you can still get pretty creative with how they look. A soldier fallen on the battlefield with their intestines trailing behind them, a corpse lost at sea, bloated and ready to pop, a corpse crawling from its grave covered in maggots and dirt. You can really get gross, my friends. Then we have mindless soldiers. Having no thoughts or imagination of their own, these zombies will take the most direct route to their target unless told to specifically avoid something. They will walk off a cliff into a pool of lava or into a river. They see no danger in front of them, only their targets. Zombies given a weapon will use it, but if dropped, they won't think to pick it back up. And last, we have undead nature, which I think we're going to see in most of these episodes, where they don't require air, food, drink, or sleep.
Yeah, that tends to just be like a common undead theme. Right?
Yeah.
We don't need to eat, we just want to eat. It's like the whole concept of like, I don't need you in my life, but I want you in my life, you know?
Oh, that's very sweet.
What can I say?
That's a very romantic way of looking at zombies. They don't need our brains, they just want them.
I mean, it is February. It is the month of love.
It is the month of love. All right, looking at their stats, they're all very low. The only things without negative modifiers are strength and con. They do have dark vision for 60 feet, so no matter what they were in life, humans finally will have dark vision if they're a zombie. So yay for them. They are immune. Congratulations, humans.
Yeah.
They are immune to both the damage and condition of poison. Their CR is only a quarter. They have undead fortitude, which allows them to make a con save when they are dropped to 0 HP unless the damage was radiant or a crit. On a success, they rise back up to 1 HP. Their attack is 1 slam attack, which does 1d6 plus 1 bludgeoning. And that's our base zombies.
How very cute of them.
Mm-hmm. They're adorable.
I know. Right. And like, I just feel like I've played in at least 2 or 3 campaigns in my life that have had zombies in them, like in one way or another, right? Like they just, undead are just so common within the D&D realm. So, but yeah, so like when thinking about zombies today, before we get into a couple of the more detailed versions of zombies, which we normally do in these kinds of episodes, just some generalized questions for you ladies. Let's roll dice, actually. Let's raise some dice. Raise some dice to the undead.
Oh God, I forgot mine over here.
Casey!
Mistakes.
We had all this setup time.
What is it, your first day?
Sorry, guys.
I just keep a bag of dice in my book bag now so that wherever I'm at, I've got them.
Yeah.
That is wise.
Because
Right.
I definitely forgot them in a couple of episodes.
Oh, 100%. No, I hear you.
I got a 17.
Casey?
7.
I got a 10. So, Peps, you're up first. So, D&D zombies are different from, like, other conventional zombies, or what you say in, like, regular lore. Do we feel that we prefer magical zombies like this, or do we prefer the plague zombies like we see in most media right now? Magic or disease? Where are we at?
Magic or disease? I don't know. I think I prefer the disease, but I think that's just what we know. Like, that's our regular idea of zombies. So
Yeah, and I think it adds a sense of realism to it, right? Whereas the magicalness is nice, where it's kind of just like you can magic away anything if you want to, just to make it work. But I find that if you find an actual genetic way that something actually occurs and makes it more real to the humans, makes it that much more frightening. You know what I mean? But what do you think, Casey?
I like the plague. I'm very science minded, so I am horrified and intrigued by the idea of all of the disease and plague and fungus and virus and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it feels like it's harder to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like you have to use like your big brain mind to make it happen. And all they want to do is eat your brain mind, right?
Yeah.
But they're not hungry.
They're not.
No, absolutely not. Are
they
you guys watching?
It.
They don't need it. They want it. Have you guys seen those TikTok audios where it's like, if you've kidnapped like a people pleaser and they're like sitting in the back of the car, they're just like, sorry, did you want me to move? Do you want me to put my seatbelt on?
Yeah.
Like, did you pick me because you like me? Like, don't be honest. Be honest. Like, just fucking love those. Anyways, all right. What do you guys find more horrifying, fast zombies or slow zombies? Peps, you're first.
Oh yeah. I mean, horrifying, probably fast zombies, but I do prefer slow zombies.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My preference is slow.
My preference is slow. I like it slow. What can I say?
Fair enough, Peps.
Oh my God.
For me, like I have the ingrained fear of being chased. And I think that's just like from having siblings growing up. You get chased everywhere. And so now as an adult, if someone is walking slightly too close behind me or like walking slightly faster than I am, like my internal body just like shrinks up into like the tiny little, like, I don't know. It hurts my soul when I'm being chased. So fast zombies scare me the most because I know I'm not that fast.
Yeah.
Like my legs are built for strength and lifting, not for moving my body at fast speeds.
Same.
Yeah. I can squat for days, but if you make me run on a treadmill, I'll punch you in the face.
Same.
So I feel like I am more horrified of fast zombies, but like I do enjoy the horror themes of when you have a slow zombie. Like, because it adds, I think, to the true horror of a storyline. I think when you have a monster or an enemy that is slow moving, right?
Yeah.
What about you, Casey? Yeah.
Yeah, the fast zombies for sure just freak me the fuck out. I believe in all of the eras of like zombie apocalypse movies, it was, the slow zombies, the lumbering, the like moaning sounds of the scary zombies. And then 28 Days Later came out and it was terrifying because they were booking it at you. And I was like, what is happening? This can't be possible.
These were full tilt zombies that were just like, and like, to be fair, like that theme song for 28 Days Later, if you've never watched it, audience, watch it. That theme song has been on my playlist since the day that movie came out. Because it's just it used to be weirdly enough, my one on my running playlist because it would make me want to run faster.
Yeah. It's that I'm only running on this treadmill to train for the zombie apocalypse.
Yes.
Like, that's the only reason.
Actually, weird plug. There was a while ago that I used an app called Zombies Run.
Yeah.
And it was basically an audio that would play, and it would play over top of your music. So you could listen to your own music while you were running. But every once in a while, if you were running too slowly, it would be like the zombies are starting to catch up to you. And it would give you missions. And the further you run, because it follows your GPS, you would pick up items, and then you have to build your infrastructure. And so it was like a little mini game that you could play in like living in the zombie apocalypse. So weirdly enough, during the pandemic is when I downloaded this app, and I would go running every day, do my 5K, do my 10K, specifically just so that I could get items and like build up this fortress to protect me from the zombie hordes. So highly recommend. But the beauty of it was that it would play over top of your music, so that you could just have a regular run, but just with the fear of being caught by zombies, you know?
That's amazing. That's probably the only way I will ever run.
Zombies.
Zombies.
All right, this is going to be my favorite question. I'm excited to hear what you guys want to say. You get to pick your team of people that you would have from the It's a Mimic podcast group of who your zombie survival apocalypse group is. Who would you pick and why?
Oh shit.
Yeah.
3 of us, huh? I mean, definitely Megan.
You can pick anyone from the It's a Mimic podcast. But thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's been decided you're the scariest of everybody on the
I love that you guys think I'm scary enough to scare away a zombie, and I'm down with that.
I don't know. I mean, you also want to have some fun in the apocalypse. So I think I'd pick both of you. And then maybe one of the guys to sacrifice.
Dan,
yeah. I was gonna say Dan, but I didn't want to be mean.
Well, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? That's what we live for. No, I would definitely bring over my It's Mimic ladies. I feel like we need that because I need that sanity. But I think that if I was to add to survival, it would definitely be Dave.
Yeah, that's true.
Dave's our hunter-gatherer. You know what I mean? Like, we need Dave on our team.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this on the aspects of it's us three and who else do we take? That's where I'm at right now.
That's true. Dave's a good one.
I
also am a hunter-gatherer as well. So I've got that going.
So
Excellent.
I can definitely get us some dinner, ladies.
Great. I'll keep up with the armaments and the battle, keep up that morale.
But Dan would also be good at like helping us build a shelter.
That's the thing. He's our builder, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I think everybody just bring something. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I also thought of Adam in the sense that he would assess every possible option that is available at the time of where we are at and give us the best possible outcome based on percentages.
He's our strategist, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So shit, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know who I would cut other than, like the regular fodder, like Brad, get out of here. Just Kyle, fuck it. Tyler, eat. We have a strategist, we have a builder, we have a survivalist. Like, I think we're golden, guys.
We're good.
I think our D&D crew would be great, except for the fact that Pepsi need to come north.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
We're gonna somehow meet in the middle or something.
Yeah, no, man, we go far north. We go to where the actual snow is, not like this fake shit that we have, but like the real snow.
Yeah, go to Saskatchewan. You can see the horde coming for about 5 hours ahead. So.
Okay, we'll all meet there.
All right, well, let's get into it, guys.
All right, so the first item that we have to talk about is the zombie clot. So you'll find most of the information about zombie clot in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. This is certainly a fun twist to challenge your players above and beyond just the large horde of zombies that players will pick off one by one or use an AoE effect. This is if you were to crush a whole bunch of zombies together and they fuse to create a huge monster. It's pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Just the name Zombie Clot is not
right. I instantly went to blood clot and it turned my stomach, but I don't know, pretty cool though. So it has a CR of 6. So it has pretty high strength and con, and an AC of 12 with just, as not surprisingly, natural armor. And since it ends up being a huge size, it has a speed of 40 feet. and a decent pile of HP that's just over 100. So it's certainly much, much beefier than, a few single zombies. It has the same damage immunities to poison as a standard zombie, but it has 6 conditional immunities. So that's going to be an issue for a lot of like spell and more magical attacks. And it has dark vision of 60 feet. So this giant Clot, it can understand the languages that the zombies used to know, but it cannot speak. So I feel like that's also an interesting twist to potentially make some guilt trips or, build a little bit of like role playing into it as a DM. What else? Okay, so as far as unique abilities, it has the same ones as a standard zombie plus a few more. So it has like the Undead Fortitude. There's a few interesting ones. One being Deadly Stench. So this is any creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of the zombie Clot must make a DC 14 con save or take 2d8 poison damage. And the poison damage will last until the start of the creature's next turn. And it also can make multi-attacks, so it will make 2 slam attacks, which also, at lower level player level, it can be more damaging than you realize when there's multi-attack there. So the most unique ability that it has is called Flesh and Tomb. Oh my gosh. This has a recharge that it needs, but essentially the huge zombie Clot flings a clump of itself at a creature it can see within 30 feet, and the target must succeed on a DC 16 strength save or take 3d10 bludgeoning damage. And if the creature is large or smaller, so basically less than the huge size of the zombie Clot, it becomes entombed in the dead mass of flesh. This means that the creature is restrained. It has total coverage against attacks because it's entombed in zombie flesh.
Of course. That makes so much sense.
Oh my God. But it does take 3d6 necrotic damage at the start of every turn until it's freed. So that will literally eat you away for, you won't last many rounds with that going on as well. The dead pile of flesh that's entombed you actually then has hit points and an AC. So other players can attack it and destroy it to free the target. So it's got some really interesting mechanics. This is the first time I've seen a monster with the ability to kind of like splice off a hunk of itself, and then it actually becomes not necessarily a dangerous attacking creature, but a creature that then needs to be attacked as well and destroyed separately from the huge monster.
Yeah.
It's like a worse gelatinous cube getting stuck in.
Yeah.
It is basically like a flying gelatinous cube.
Yeah,
You
if somebody threw a gelatinous cube at you, but it was made out of flesh.
Instead of kind of somewhat pleasant, imaginative Jello, it's the gore and like rotting flesh. And this creature, this mound will also has immunity to poison and psychic damage. So I am horrified, but also love this thing, and I'm so excited I read about it because I think it's a really interesting and disgusting thing that you could bring in from left field, essentially, during a combat, especially if the party is only fighting a giant zombie horde, and then you plop this thing in there. It's going to be fun.
I love it. Yeah. Well,
boy.
Is this a picture of it?
Yeah.
If you look in the book, the picture is fucking frightening. And the thing that like gets to me too, Casey, is like we talked a lot about giants And like the fact that it can, like giants technically have a higher walking speed just because of its natural stride, because of how tall they are. The fact that this thing is so large that we're like, that's the same concept, that it has a 40-foot walking speed because of how large it is frightening. Because you wouldn't imagine, again, fast versus slow zombies. In my mind, this is a giant fast zombie because it goes faster than the average speed. So you're going to run from this, but this giant fucking ball of disgusting is going to be chasing you, and it's going to catch you, which is scary as fuck. The only person that's going to get away from this is your rogue, like, or your monks or what have you, right? Like,
and you never actually consider ranged attacks with any type of zombie, and this one has a ranged attack on you, and it's pretty devastating if it hits. So.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it because I feel like we're already talking about it. So let's get into a bit of a conversation around these guys. Let's raise some dice to the blood clot.
19.
Sorry, the zombie clot.
The zombie clot.
So gross.
You got a 19?
Yeah.
Well done. Casey, what
This
you got?
dice is loving me.
5.
5?
I am rolling low today.
I got an 11. I feel like I'm definitely the average here, so I'm down for this.
I gotta remember to use this dice in my next game.
I'm switching dice. Fuck that.
I was told, so I've recently been starting to DM a lot more, like in D&D and in L5R, and I've learned that I definitely have to separate what dice I DM with versus what dice I play with. Because I feel like they hate you if you use them one way. Like, I'm just like, oh, crap. So I'm just learning that now because I'm like, I'm doing both a lot more. But anyways, let's get into it. So, Peps, first, what's a good quest idea for these guys, do you think? How would you utilize them?
Yeah, sort of going off of what Casey said, I think I would just have your players like fighting a horde of zombies and then this like coming around the corner, like not expecting. So they would go and, there's a necromancer or whatever that's raising the dead and blah, blah, blah. Your standard thing. But I don't think that they would expect this coming because you have to be a pretty high level also to like throw this at them. So they would go off thinking like, oh, this is going to be easy. It's just a bunch of zombies. No problem. And then like, I would have like the loud footprint, coming around the corner because this thing is going to be hefty, so it's going to make that like sound and you would smell it, first and hear it and that. So.
Yeah, I love the idea that it's like in the middle of your zombie horde, but it just looks like a big boulder or a blob at first.
Ooh,
what I mean? And so your team like ends up winning this big battle against like these little zombies. They feel like they've taken back like a building or something, like a safe haven that they want to like get to, right? And they end up taking out this huge like horde of zombies, and they just think that it's just a massive like dead tissue or like congealed grossness, because like body horror within a zombie campaign is going to be very common. But then all of a sudden they're like getting ready, they're setting up for the night, and all of a sudden this thing starts to move.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like you give your team a moment of safety, and then all of a sudden it just starts to stand up. Like I can only think of like did you guys ever watch the Saw movies, the first one, where they're in like the bathroom and the guy that like does everything is just laying dead in the room the whole time? Sorry, spoilers for Saw. But
spoilers for that movie that came out like
a million years ago. But I was a youngin'. I was a Ute when that movie came out, and I remember watching that movie without any spoilers. And I remember watching that ending where like they feel like they got out of the room, and all these things happened, and all of a sudden the guy that put them in the room has been in the room the whole time. And I don't know why, but that blew my fucking mind. And I feel like you could do that with this thing, because unless someone specifically investigates it to see if it's alive and gets close to it, it's just going to look like a massive dead bodies, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like that would be, and that just bleeds right into body horror, right? Being able to describe this massive flesh and disgustingness, right?
Yeah.
What about you, Casey? How do you picture it, and how would you use it?
I kind of wanted to merge the classic like plague zombie style that we see in movies and try and see if you can make it happen in a D&D campaign. So many zombie apocalypse shows or movies have like moving the horde off of a cliff into like a crater or cavern, or like corralling them down and they fall off a cliff into a lake or a river. And I like the idea of that being a strategy, and it epically works. The zombies all move and they all fall and crash and smash into a pile at the bottom of like a ravine. And then the players are all standing at the top like, yay, yay us. Like, look at how good we did. And then somebody probably the rogue or someone with higher perception just notices there's a little bit of movement. And it's like, it's probably just a random zombie that somehow didn't get its brain smashed in the fall. And then suddenly it gets more and more and more. And then they just see this like gnarly mass like lift up. And then it starts like climbing back up or something like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have climbability, but
I imagine it could.
Right?
I mean,
it's got a lot of hands.
I was saying, it's got lots of limbs that it can use for perching itself up that fucking thing.
If you look at this picture, it's got a lot of arms coming out of it.
Right? And like then we'll bleed right into body horror then. Like, I mean, we've talked quite a bit about what this thing looks like. Like, it's multi-limbed, multi-decay. Like, but any other thoughts and ideas on how you would establish that body horror, Peps?
I mean, I definitely think it's got, it's deathly stench. So I would play with the smell of it. I mean, all zombies are going to have that stench, but like this is so bad that it does damage. Mm-hmm. So I would like play into that as well. And just like all the limbs moving around, all the jaws on the faces, like cracking and moaning, and it can't talk, but I imagine it could still moan and make noises. And it's just this like echo of like pain and sorrow coming off of these.
It's just like a weeping mound.
Yeah. Just the cracking of all the bones as it moves, because it's gonna like be contorting and breaking them as it goes because they're all fused together.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a full its own like skeletal structure. It's just built its own, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just that weird cricking and cracking. It's gonna be like the clickers from The Last of Us is what you're gonna hear as it walks, mixed in with like the thump 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 as it's running forward.
And the like goop of it, the flesh and all of that, and it's gonna sound horrible.
Yeah, so I love that.
I would go with that. I would go with like describing the stench and the sound and that kind of stuff.
Gross. No, I agree. I love that fight because we don't talk about audio a lot when it comes to like horror or like talking about things in D&D. We do a lot of visual or a lot of what it feels like or a lot of what you smell or like, but like what you hear doesn't come up a lot other than like you hear a whisper on the wind. But I feel like this is when you can really play into like that schleps across the floor or it's like, audible squelching, shall we say.
Yeah. Definite squelch. Yeah. And I think you could play into that, especially with the flesh and tomb ability. So say you have your melee attacker, your barbarian that's just right up in there, doesn't give a shit about the stench, and it sees this giant mass start like raising its arm and looks like it's like going back to throw something, but it doesn't have anything, and it just hears that cracking and squishing and squelching, and then it flings its arm and a hunk comes off of it, and I imagine like the spray of crap that comes down off of the creature, it could like go all over the barbarian that's right next to it, and like the horror of that, you could really make it really disgusting.
Yeah,
the spray, the blood spray, and the rotting flesh spray.
The splat, the kersploosh.
Yeah. That's true. The sound of that like chunk coming off of it and splashing into you.
Yeah. Oh.
These things are so gross.
They are.
Yeah, but you kind of want to use it, don't you?
Kind of do. They're like, I think it's just, again, it's the idea of the fact that I can whip a part of itself at somebody. Just like that visual alone, I feel like would bring an item of body horror, right? Because you can describe what it's like peeling a piece of itself off of itself. And then like, you just all of a sudden see this wad of flesh being hurled at your face.
Yeah.
And then like that, again, describing that body horror when they get hit to the other players that are standing in the room, being like, you see your friend get fucking pegged by a limb,
Yeah. Or just disappear entirely under a mound of rot.
Yeah.
And it's like, Bob?
Yeah.
Bob?
Kevin, where are you?
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. All right. Peps, any other like role playing or maybe even exploration clues that you could think of that you would use for these?
I think, role playing, they don't really have like minds of their own. So it's hard to, I guess, in a role play stance other than they're big and horrifying. But they can't talk, so you can't have a conversation with them. It would more so just be going off of whatever has risen it. Exploration clues, I would like, if you're just going to find these out there, if you're like going to give your players clues at all, I mean, these things would leave really big, really weird prints behind, covered in just goop and bits of flesh and shards of bone and stuff like that. So I would, if anybody's looking and tracking and looking for, footprints or anything like that, I would describe them in that way, that like they're definitely going to leave behind
slug
grossness.
trails.
Yeah, they're definitely like, they're not just going to be dry footprints. They're going to be gross.
Yeah, I like wrote down slug trails.
Yeah,
because they're just like leaving behind these giant, like, I feel like even they would be dragging their feet, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're running or going after prey. I feel like if they're moving, they're kind of just moving in like a giant blob mass like a slug would.
Yeah. And you could even have like the imprint of a face in that, like dirt. Because, there's probably, they're all contorted and who knows what ended up where. So there could be like a face at the bottom of it that's just like leaving like prints as it walks.
Oh,
gross. What
about you, Casey? Any other thoughts?
What popped in my head just now is potentially fighting this or coming across this in the nighttime. So if you come across a horde or you're trying to move along in the evening when it's pitch black and you're never expecting to look up to see a giant mass like zombie creature, that could be really interesting to play with, because you're fighting zombies on the ground and then you hear the squelching, you hear the big thumps, but it's like, how could this possibly be a zombie? Zombies aren't huge in size. But then you see glimpses of like limbs, crushed pieces of body up high. And yeah, that would be interesting.
You see the bit of it being thrown before you see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
And just all of a sudden there's a mass covering somebody.
That comes like slamming into your camp and like by your fire. And it's like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think you could throw these in, like you don't need a specific rhyme or reason. If there's zombies there, I think there's justification to drop this in anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other like added like quest idea I kind of thought of as you were talking about that, Casey, would it be really cool if, in the middle of the night, you got a blob thrown on one of your friends and like it didn't actually go in to attack you. You went in and you like helped your friend, killed the blob that was surrounding it, and like they survived. But that's kind of like your clue that you might be coming up to one of these later on. So then you actively avoid it. So one of your team members is like, oh, I know where this came from. And so then you have a player who's actively looking for those slug trails and actively looking for like that path so that you don't run into it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's clever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. Any final combat ideas before I move on?
I mean, I would really lead into the flesh into which does have a recharge, so you can only use it so many times, as lucky as you are with your dice.
Yeah, fair enough.
But that 100% is probably the best feature of them, because like Casey said, you don't get ranged attacks often. Like zombies don't use weapons unless they are given weapons.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they would even be able to shoot a bow if they had one, Yeah.
Could you imagine if someone was like still half alive inside of it and was like shooting arrows from inside of its chest?
Oh god.
Oh my.
Because you're just restrained. Because I can imagine if it absorbed you like into its own self-being. Because if you're restrained, you can still because if you're grappled, you can still do attacks. Restrained, I don't think you can.
I think you're correct. Yes.
Yeah.
This is the endless what no one can properly remember, and every goddamn session it's like, wait.
What happens when I'm restrained? What does that mean? I'm actually gonna have to look it up here just so I know.
Let's give the correct info, I suppose.
Yeah, so restrained creature's speed is 0. Attack rolls against a creature have advantage. The creature has disadvantage on dexterity saves. So you can fight it yourself when you're being restrained.
Okay.
So in my mind, like if your friend got absorbed into its chest, it's wildly shooting arrows. And because like I feel like your attacks are I would make it that your attacks are like at disadvantage, whatever.
Yeah.
Like roll on a table and you accidentally arrow one of your friends in the face. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I do like the idea of it like throwing its bit and entombing you and then like coming back and absorbing that back into it as well.
I feel that's the goal is to throw a piece of itself out at you, absorb you, and then let's like again like schlep gelatinous cube slug itself back together, right? With you as an attachment. It's just like keeps getting bigger and bigger, right? Ooh, we love it. Yeah. Love to see it. Cool. Well, I'm going to go on to another thing, which is equally as frightening and goes back to our conversation of magical versus non-magical zombies. This one is definitely magical in a way. So I'm going to talk about the Soul Shaker. This beauty can be found within the Journey Through the Radiant Citadel book. And let's get ready for a ride, ladies. The Soul Shaker is a fucking frightening sight. It is basically a mob of zombie-like limbs. So unlike this one that looks like almost a humanoid, like yours, Casey, had like almost a humanoid feature to it once it kind of schlepped itself together. This one is just a mob of limbs. So think of like a ball of hands. This is a ball of hands that just hunts down and seeks more limbs. And it cannot be truly destroyed unless you destroy every limb. So even if one limb escapes, it will regenerate itself in a matter of days. So let's get it. Yeah, so let me get the stats that kind of describes how this works. So it is only a CR4, which is weird, but it's definitely a chaotic undead kind of creature with a natural armor of 13 and a speed of 20. So this is a slow zombie. It's going to slowly, like, in my mind, this is just a ball of limbs. So it's kind of pulling itself across the ground, right? So it's not running after you. So this is going to be your slow zombie horror. It excels in strength, con, and weirdly enough, above average in charisma, which I'll get into, but does lack dex, intelligence, and wisdom. So as an undead creature, of course, it is resistant to necrotic damage and immune to poison, and its only language is telepathy of up to 60 feet. So this ball of hands can talk to your brain.
Interesting.
Yeah, but as I mentioned, this thing has charisma, and here's why. So it has to lure prey to it. As I said, it's just a ball of limbs. It's a little slow. So instead of running after you to catch you, it's going to lure you into itself. So it has an ability called Enthrall, which is basically once per day, you can cast the Guise spell, which is a DC save of 12. 12, yep, which is... and then I had to look up what the Guise spell was. And basically what it is that you just get magical command over a creature to act out a course of action or a service. So basically it's going to guide
come to me.
Come to me, right? And then as mentioned, it does rebuild itself if it has one remaining limb. So this ability is called Reconstruction. So if the Soul Shaker is reduced to 0, like its health reduced to 0, it will explode into 7 smaller versions of itself. And if after 6 days it still has any remaining limbs, they will teleport to where it once was and reconstruct itself.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And then if you're to fight it, its actions in battle is it has Crushing Grasp, which is a melee attack of only a +7 to hit with an average of 14 damage. But if you are a medium or small creature, which most humanoid creatures are, you are then grappled. And then on top of that, it has a bonus action called Consume Vitality, which is basically if you are grappled, it can target you, and it's a con save of a DC 14 or take an average of 7 necrotic damage, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a reduction to your max hit points.
Oh.
And you can't undo that until a long rest. And if you're reduced to 0 with that ability, you auto die.
Yeah.
And this is a CR4.
What?
Jeez.
So, because to be fair, like if you look at its hit points and its pool, it's not that strong. The fear factor of this thing is when you kill it and you think you've killed it, you have it because it'll explode into 7 different limbs. And if you don't kill all 7 of those limbs, or if you think you did it, or like it'll play dead and be like, oh, I'm dead, I've exploded and I'm gone. But it will just come back later, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, this is like that difference between when we were talking about magical and non-magical zombies. This is an example for me of a magical zombie I don't want to be around.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, that sounds horrifying.
Not
and
great.
Traumatizing for the little baby players.
Yeah.
Right? All right, well, let's raise some dice to the Soul Shaker and talk about some creative uses.
11.
I got a 15.
8.
Casey, get your shit together.
Maybe I will get double digits sometime.
All right. Well, I'll talk to myself first, and then you guys can go watch it. So, first question always is, what's a nice, cool quest to use with these ones? I like to think that this is a combination of all of your old dead PCs. So if you've been playing a long-running campaign with your group and you have a lot of weird, like, legacy PCs or PCs that have died in the past, this is going to be a compilation of all of those characters put together. So the limbs will have like the watches and stuff of like your old characters. Have like the tattoos that your old monks used to have. Like you'll be able to recognize these are the body limbs of your old PCs or old characters. That a lich was following you around once, and then put that curse on you so that you would have to like face this one day, kind of thing. Or it's an embodiment of like your family was destroyed by a horde of zombies, and then that sadness and horror ended up creating this monster that now arises every once in a while and follows you around, and you have no idea why. No matter how many times you kill it, it keeps coming back, and so eventually you decide to hunt it down, right? So there's a lot of personal shit you can add to this one because they are legitimate limbs. It's not just a ball of goo, right?
Yeah.
So
wow, Megan, you cut deep.
Yeah.
You know what?
Right for the heart.
That sort of reminds one of my characters' backstories. She was a fallen Asmar, and she went off on a mission and came back, and her entire village had been killed because somebody was looking for her. That would have been a really good thing to throw at her, as this is the body parts of her village that she once grew up in, and she would like recognize that. So I think if your player has like a really tragic backstory, as most of us do, that would be a really fun way to really traumatize that player, as this is the body parts of their family and their town that they grew up in, and
their friends, their teachers, like their trainers.
Yeah.
Start rolling sanity scores. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That would be horrible.
What about you, Casey?
Yeah, I can spin it. I like the idea of linking this to potentially a lich creation. You could be going into catacombs or into the depths to find a lich, and this could be just a really cruel trap that the lich has put in that maybe would be less of something you would expect. And it could be a compilation of all of the creatures that have tried to navigate through the catacombs or through the labyrinth. And it's just a compilation into this creature that just continues, like decade after decade, gets more and more and more limbs, and potentially like more powerful and difficult to get through. So you could spin it that way.
Absolutely. I like the idea that it's like if it was to be the lich the lich created this thing as like a warning to people, like near its lair, and it has like 4 or 5 of these just rolling around its lair.
Yeah.
And like it just keeps them alive. And the joys again, like because even if you destroyed it and blew up into 7 limbs, even if the limbs run away, as long as they survive, it will go back to its old posting and regenerate itself. So it's kind of like this lich will always have these protectors around because they will always come back to where they once were.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be the similar story of recognizable like traits on limbs, because it's like, oh, like so-and-so went in and never came out. And then during this part, it's like, oh yeah, there is his arm. So, bring that personal aspect.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like one of your, like you go into a town and you hear a story about like this brave warrior that went to go save and like never came back, and like, but gives you the defining features of like, this is what their armor looked like, or this is the sword that they carried. You know what I mean? And then you just go in and you get those little clue drops of like, oh, their sword is in this cavern. That's strange. They must be in this cavern somewhere. And then they come up like that's an arm wearing like the armor of whatever the person that
has their like holy symbol or something on it.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of, let's go into body horror. So, as mentioned with these things, of course, they're undead, so you can use that schlepping noise. But I feel like because these ones are full-on solid limbs, it's going to be hearing that, like the hands hitting the ground and dragging, right? Or like again, like feet hitting the ground and dragging itself through. Like, so it's not going to be in my mind like the squelching or the schlepping. but more the sound of something dragging. It's like the dragging of a shovel behind you in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because they're slower, right? They only move at 20 feet. So the horror is going to be that like you are being followed by something, but it never quite catches up to you. But you can hear its voice in your head because it has telepathy of up to 60 feet.
Yeah.
But because it's the limbs of all the people that you knew or people that you don't know or just people, it's a different voice every time. Because that's how I imagine. I feel like as it grabs limbs, it's grabbing pieces of that person's soul in my mind.
Or it would be like an echoey voice of like all of them talking together.
Yeah, it's like
that like super creepy, like when twins talk together in the same like twin ghosts.
Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, I love it. Yeah. What about you, Tess?
I would go with like it says they all have to be the same body part, correct?
Yeah. So like if it's hands,
like
for hands, feet, it's looking for feet.
It could be eyes. It could be ears, you could go with some really gnarly body parts. It just all has to be the same one. So I would like if it's eyeballs and it has that like squishy sound when it rolls.
Just like a ball of eyes that
just like a massive ball of several like just hundreds of eyes looking at you as it rolls around. That would be horrible. But like going off of like if a lich creates these, it could be different. Like they could have 7 of these and they all be different body parts because they have these bodies that they're taking the parts off of. So they're all made out of the same bodies, but just different parts.
Right.
That's frightening. Yeah. And like I can like now because you said eyeballs, now I'm imagining that like a good like clue or exploration piece would be like there's just one little eyeball rolling around, like trying to find its body. You know what I mean? Just like you could see it like moving.
Yeah, and you might like just decide to follow it, see where it's going,
see where it goes, like, and just like the nerve coming off of the back of it too.
Oh.
So could you imagine if you were fighting 2 of these in one room? You're fighting the bundle of hands and you're fighting a bundle of eyeballs. Yeah. I am now imagining one of your players goes down and dies at some point. And then the hand reaches in and grabs your eyeball and like throws it to the eyeball.
Oh.
The eyeball. We're really good at this, guys.
Yeah.
We
would have such a fucked up campaign if we wrote one together.
We should just do it. We should all just write a horror themed zombie campaign and just do all of these things.
Well, I am actually doing a Call of Cthulhu game next weekend that's going to have zombies in it.
Amazing.
So I'm like hoping to get some. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just kill 2 birds with 1 stone and do zombies for. I got to research them anyways.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Casey, anything added for body horror for you?
I'm feeling nauseous right now. I don't know. I think we covered some really good ones there. I think the way that we can spin this to be so personal as well is just so horrifying. I don't know. The voices, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the voices, like the call-outs to like what the physical hands look like, or like the eye color. Like, could you imagine if you had like an old character that had like a weird colored eye, and like you see like this like a copper colored eyeball or something like that in this mask? You're like, oh, great, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like I almost said, I feel like I almost automatically said, "Fuck you, Adam," and I think that's something that he could do. But we talked quite a bit about these ones, and I feel like there's not a whole heck of a lot more. So I'll just kind of say, like, is there anything else you guys want to touch on for role playing or exploration or even combat with these ones?
I mean, the role playing, I would definitely play around with these. I think you probably have the best chance of role playing with any of the zombies because it's got the telepathy. So I would, if it does have somebody inside of it that your party used to know, like I would play on that. And it would still have those sort of memories and call out to your player in that voice, especially if there was like one party member that was particularly close to it. Or like I said, with my backstory, like it would be the mom's voice of my character that would be calling out to it that she hasn't heard for 30 years. Yeah. And just like remembering that. So I would definitely play around with the voices that you hear coming out.
Yeah.
Of it.
Well, because it has the guy's ability to lure you in, right? So I feel like that would be that personal touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is definitely one of the things you would not expect with any sort of like zombie variant is this is very much the magic piece. So that could be fun and unexpected.
Yeah. And I feel like inherently because these are magical, like there's magic to these, that I feel like they would be connected to something larger, like a lich or, you know, or demi-lich or something, right? I feel like it just kind of has to have that kind of piece to it. How is it magical? Why is it magical, right?
Yeah. I do think I came across one of these in a game. I don't know for sure, but it sounds like we were just going through the woods and there was like a ball of limbs that like rolling by and we had to fight it.
Casually rolling by. Yeah.
So like that could even be like it's just wandering about, you know, it's just there in the world and your party could come across it randomly, you know, it's just rolling through the woods.
Or like an Indiana Jones scenario where you think it's a boulder that's gonna come rolling down at you, but it's a ball of limbs or a ball of eyeballs.
I hate it.
I do have one last question. Do we think that thing from Adam's family is one of the limbs that got away from this thing?
Ooh.
He's so sentient though. You know what I mean? Like he definitely has his own mind. I feel like I would want him to be, but not at the same time. Because I feel like he would be like the mastermind behind the rest of them.
Yeah, he's like the one.
He's the OG. Yeah. That's so cute. Oh man. But the thing, like now that you have the thing like that in my head, because the thing is really fast because he's agile on his fingertips, right?
Yeah. But he's just one. Like I imagine if they're clumped together, then they gotta. It's that like team building thing where you all have to go in the same. it's like a 3-legged race. Like you're faster by yourself, of course.
Of course, you're faster by yourself. That's when the thing left. He's like, "You guys are slowing me down.
You're slowing me down. I got shit to do.
I have a life to live." I love it. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about the zombie plague spreaders. So this is more your OG zombie that we think about in like pop culture. And these can be found also in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. The lore in the book is really brief and really leaves it open to the DM to use their imagination on how to use these. There's like a paragraph and like a sentence that includes these. From my interpretation, this is what happens when a horde of zombies becomes infected with a disease. Already being dead, the disease wouldn't affect them, but they would still be carriers. So they would infect the land, the wildlife, and the civilizations in their path. So like I said, these are definitely more of what we think of when we think of zombies in pop culture. Their stats are still very low, with negative modifiers to intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Dex is average with a +0, making them just a little bit faster than your base zombies. Strength is the highest, followed by con. They are resistant to necrotic damage and immune to poison damage. They're also immune to being charmed, exhausted, or poisoned. Their CR goes up to a 4. They also get undead fortitude, which works the same as the base zombie. And their undead nature is now called unusual nature. Not really sure why, but same thing, different name. They do get a new feature called Viral Aura, which makes any creature starting within 10 feet of the zombie make a Constitution save. If failed, they are now poisoned and can't regain HP until the end of its next turn. On a success, the creature is immune to this for 24 hours. As for actions, we now have a multi-attack with 2 slams, which does 1d6 plus 3 bludgeoning and 2d8 necrotic on a hit. And finally, once a day, they can use Virulent Miasma, hopefully I said that right, but releasing toxic gas in a 30-foot radius sphere centered on itself. Any creature in the area must make a con save, taking 4d6 poison on a fail, half as much on a success. and any humanoid reduced to 0 HP dies and rises as a zombie. So this is where you get that if this kills you, you are now one of them.
We love that. So yeah, to your point, like your classic, like what we would think of in our society as like a zombie. This is like your non necessarily magical one. This is a disease based one, which is really cool. All right, well, let's raise some dice to the zombie plague spreader. 12.
17.
Okay, so you're going first.
Yay!
How exciting.
Oh, shit.
All right, what's a good quest idea for these ones, do you think?
Okay. I like that these actually also might not be what players are expecting. The classic, if you die at their hand, you become one. Because lots of times you just don't think that that's actually going to happen in D&D. Like as for yourself. So I don't know. I think you could put these in if you want to up the challenge rating of a zombie horde. I always like a AoE kind of stench or area of effect that the players don't expect either. So absolutely utilize that in an encounter. Yeah, I'm thrown. I don't get to go first. I'm out of my game.
It's all good. For me, I kind of like the idea that these would be the center, like the pinnacle of like a zombie horde. So as you're walking through like a town or something that is like infested with zombies, you're gonna find one of these at the center.
And like the gas is just like swirling around it. Yeah.
And then like as soon as you get your like, and the goal is to get rid of it because it's what's causing everything around it to become zombified and it's destroying the city from the center. Like it's just so your goal is to find its hideout, find out where it is and destroy it so you can like bring peace to this area, right? It's kind of like that old trope of destroy what's poisoning the air, destroy what's poisoning the water or what have you, right? But it's going to be hard to get close to it because of its aura and its stench. And it's like, I could potentially become a zombie because if you basically, even like, so Peps, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you were to die somewhere close to it, if you're within its gaseous range, you would still become a zombie or do you have to be killed by it? Because I'm imagining if you're fighting a horde of zombies around it and you got killed, would you still rise because you're within its gaseous area?
Well, it says within a 30-foot radius sphere centered on itself. So I think you would have to be within that 30 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and still on a failed, you still take damage from that gas. So, but it does say a humanoid reduced to 0 rises. So it could be really your discretion, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel like that would be my ruling as a DM, that if you died within that 30 feet by anything, like let's say you're fighting another zombie across, like just fighting another zombie, but you died and it moves like 30 feet to where you are and you're within that gaseous space and you're at 0 hit points, it'll bring you back up. That's my 100%. But
you could use the gas as more like a fog where there might be zombies just laying in wait in the fog, and as you move through it to try to get to the center, you think it looks just open and clear, but then you're walking through and on top of zombies that are gonna try and grab you. That would be cool.
Yes. Yeah. So I have just last weekend, we've in my online campaign, there are 2 players that for the past year have been one of these and spreading disease and raising an army of zombies across the land. And just last weekend, this storyline came to an end finally. So that was a really cool and unique thing to see and experience. My character personally didn't come into much contact with them, but we're allowed to. It's in this world. There's several different groups, and it's all on Zoom because we're across the world. We have like players in Germany and stuff. So we're able to watch each other's sessions. So I've watched quite a bit of the sessions with these things. And it was really interesting to see how they worked this. And it started off very small. And the main PC started as just a PC, and he died in a way with this book, and he was risen and he became this undead. And just seeing him get stronger and building this army and other PCs coming into it. and joining him and spreading this plague. They like poisoned the water that then went and destroyed everything, and all these other players had to come together, and there was this huge war, and it was really cool. And so like being able to read this like literally as that storyline came to an end was really cool for me, because I'm like, holy shit, this is this is what just happened.
Yeah, I think that is really cool, because you could like you could just be like a sneaky undead zombie. In my head, Casey, all I could hear was Acra screaming in my head. Could you imagine if Acra became one of these? Like your undead, like now fucking lich dragonborn necromancer is now one of these.
Yeah, missed opportunity. Oh, wait. Adam, don't do that. We don't need to be fighting this on top of her being a lich.
Yeah, she's in a tower somewhere still, so there's still a risk. All right. Any like added body horror thoughts for these ones, other than like, we've talked about it's gaseous, like using a fog and things like that, and using stench a lot. Anything new that we can think of for these ones? Casey, you're first.
Oh yeah, I'm first.
Sorry, there's a dog appearance. There's been a dog sighting.
Yes. The dog has woken up, so she's like, "Can we go now?" We're not done. Yeah, I really like your idea, Megan, of having it kind of as the core and creating this fog. And it could even be a village, or it could be elsewhere. It could be in a forest that, suddenly the neighboring villagers see that there's this green fog that's like encroaching and taking over the forest, and they don't know why. And so playing on that for the visual and people going up to it to see what the hell is going on, and adding in that stench and that creepy eeriness of fog, it's always a good option. Yeah,
absolutely. They're kind of like, yeah, and I feel like you could make, and to your point, Peps, with your character storyline, like you could make these any version of a zombie, but then one of these, right? So I feel like if you like comboed what we talked about today, like we like to combo what we talked about today, like in our episodes, combo in like doing the soul shaker limbs, but are also a plague spreader.
Yeah.
And it's just rolling around this gaseous ball of limbs. You know what I mean? That's just kind of like wherever it goes, it creates more zombies. Because like the other ones can't necessarily create more zombies on their own. They can just automatically kill you. So then, but then add on top, making them a plague spreader would just, again, that would bump the CR up to like really, really difficult. Or again, bring on that opportunity for it to grab more limbs, because like the soul shaker wants to grab more limbs that are alive, right? So I can imagine it would drop you to 0 hit points, and then as a plague spreader, you would then rise, and it would take your limbs, and it would add to itself, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and even the angle of like people go into the fog, and weeks or months later, like come walking out as a zombie. So there's like just random zombies that emerge from the village or the town, that nobody actually can figure out where they're coming from.
Yeah. Or they like found out where it's coming from, so they locked down, like, I don't know, the prison, or they locked down the jail, or they locked down like the citadel, because they know that the zombies are coming from there, and if you crouch or get too close, you might become infected yourself. And so then it becomes your team's job to go in and clear out this citadel so that this town can live in peace, right?
Yeah, cool.
But
I would add, I think with these, if you wanted to give your players some sort of hint that these are different, and being a plague spreader, I would add like those boils and like things that we think about from the plague,
and like disease.
Yes, like I would make them look more diseased. They would have like black goo coming from their mouths, and they would have like pussy boils popping off of them that like don't slow them down because they're dead, but clearly is a sign of something is even more not right with this one. Like
it's like that don't touch kind of
body
horror you would use, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. Any other final thoughts on these ones for role playing, exploration clues, or any kind of combat thoughts? Any final things to wrap this guy up?
These ones are kind of like the not as obvious one to me, which I think is kind of cool, because the other ones, they're very obviously different from a regular zombie. And these ones, you might it could be incognito a bit in the zombie horde. And I always think of Walking Dead and like the Whisperers. Sorry if nobody's watched that season, but where they're just in and amongst and maybe even directing the horde in some way, but they have these extra abilities that might just surprise the players in the zombie horde.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Peps?
So one thing in our campaign, as like a clue that we would get when we would come to a town, if we would really look at people, they would have boils, they would have a cough, there would be people that looked sick. I don't think that coming across one of these, like if one of these went through a town, it may not have actually killed everybody, but it could have infected everybody, and it could be a while before they actually die and rise again as a zombie. So I would play with that, like you come into a town and there's a mysterious illness and you don't really know why, and it's, do you stick around and try to help them? Do you get the fuck out of there? You're gonna have clerics and paladins that want to stay and help these people, and it's only a matter of time before your party starts to get infected, and you see like a boil forming on somebody's hand in your party, and trying to figure out if there's a cure for this or if you're just screwed or that kind of thing. So I think you could really go into just the scariness of a plague and then zombies on top of that.
Yeah. And then your team worrying how does it spread, right? Like, is it in the air? Is it in, or if I touch them, am I infected, right? Like, in the campaign that we're playing, which is L5R, like these diseases can be like transmitted through like touch or through like small injury, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just very like, you don't touch the things that are sick.
Yes.
Whereas like in D&D, it could just be like, okay, well, it's not necessarily transmitted that way, but you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So then it becomes an investigation process for like your clerics or for like your healers in your party to try and figure out this disease and how it's come about. And if you've never seen it before, how can we research it? Like that kind of piece, right? That's a good exploration.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right?
I did have, I was in one stream that was based in this world. We don't normally stream them, but this one was streamed. And it was my first time playing a paladin. I don't typically heal anything. Like, I'm just not a good healer. But I came across a sick person, and I, as a paladin, my very first time healing anybody, did lay on hands, and it killed the person. And it was like automatically, as I tried to magically heal it, because it couldn't be healed by magical means because it was this magical plague, like his face sunk in and his jaw cracked, and I could hear like the moanings of like his horror as he was getting more and more, like it sped up the process of this, and you could see my face like horrified in the stream, and I'm like, I am never healing anything again. So I think you could even like add that, like there a mysterious way your players have to problem solve to try and heal this, not just any healing magic is going to work on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry that happened to you, Pet.
It was horrifying.
Sorry,
it was horrifying, and it's on YouTube, and anyone can see it.
If you want to watch somebody get horribly like upset, here you go.
Yeah,
this is what it is.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks for that. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about zombie like swarms and shit.
Swarm of zombie limbs. We've covered fused masses of limbs, balls of limbs. Like, why not a swarm? Why not a swarm of limbs?
Swarm of limbs.
Why not? Why not?
So before we get right into what this one is specifically, just to touch on swarm rules. So we do come across several types of swarms in 5e. And what that means is a swarm can occupy another creature's space, but also you can move into that creature's space, because this is essentially tiny sized, amassed to become more of a medium-sized monster. So you can, I feel like there would be minimal times where you would choose to move into a swarm space, because you would have the 5-foot reach, and a swarm actually doesn't have reach. It has to move into your space to attack you. But then it occurred to me, maybe like if it was blocking a path through a cave or a tunnel, I mean, you're going to risk the attacks and attacks of opportunities, but this is a time where you can actually move through an enemy's space. So that's kind of a unique thing to think about with swarms. Yeah. So when you're also thinking about swarms, like you think about swarms of bats. So swarms can also move through tiny spaces. So they can shrink down, move through a space much smaller than them and come out on the other side. So thinking about that in terms of swarm of limbs, it is pretty gross. So you're going to once again find all of the details in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft for this zombie variant. The swarm of zombie limbs is probably one horrific swarm that I never want to see as a player. It's pretty cool though. So like I said, the swarm itself is medium-sized, created from the severed and broken off limbs of the undead. And so it's a whole bunch of tiny undead creating this swarm. It has a CR of 1. So you can throw this in a lot of different scenarios, and it could just add some flavor. It's a little bit harder to kill than as like classic zombie itself. It has average and below average stat block. It has a low AC of 10 and not a lot of HP. It does have a speed of 30, and here we are with an actual listed climbing speed of 30 feet, which makes sense because it's just a swarming ball of limbs. So it's just going to, boop itself up the hill and, have no issue with that.
Just boop itself up.
What another use, a travel word? That's what we're talking about the other day.
Let's just boop on down the road.
Gonna boop on down. Yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome. It has plenty of damage resistances and damage immunity, same as the zombie with poison. It has conditional immunities to pretty much everything. This is the most I have ever seen. And I guess because it's not really that necessary solid body or fused mass. It is a swarm of tiny limbs. So it doesn't then hence have any language and can't speak. And it has blind sight of 30 feet. So what blind sight means is that beyond 30 feet, it cannot see. It can only see within a 30-foot radius of itself. It's seemingly not the most difficult monster to take down if you can find a way around a lot of the immunities. But if you take into account the swarm ability itself, and it has multi-attack, and it has 2 very unique melee attack actions, it may not be as easy as you think. So the first melee attack it has is called Undead Mass. This is a bludgeoning attack with +4 to hit, and essentially it swarms around the target and does 1d6 or 1d4 damage, and that actually depends on whether the swarm has been hit and lost hit points or not. So if you think you're swinging away at this mass of limbs, if you do quite a bit of damage, there's just going to be less mass to attack with. So that's an interesting thing that kind of scales down. The second, though, is called Grasping Limbs. Again, this is a +4 to hit, and while the swarm is around its target, the target takes 2d6 necrotic damage and must succeed on a DC 12 strength save or be restrained by the swarm. The target can retry the save at the end of each turn, but while restrained, it's taking 2d6 necrotic damage if it keeps failing. So you can be freed by making the save, or if the swarm moves out of its space, or the swarm dies. So this is kind of that thing, again, that we talked about before, where it can really impede a specific target, and then, it's up to itself or its friends to come save it. So that makes it a little bit more challenging to defeat and maybe a little bit more unexpected. But yeah, it can do it can do both of those attacks in its turn. So it does have multi-attack. So it will do the Undead Mass attack and it will do the Grasping Limbs attack on its turn.
Ew.
Yeah.
We hate that. They seem simple.
We hate that for us.
We hate that for everybody involved. But yeah, they do seem pretty simple. So for this one, instead of doing so many questions, let's just kind of have a just discuss about it. So like for you folks, body horror obviously is very similar to the ones we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. It's a giant thing of limbs that are going to be crawling around, doing its thing, grabbing at you. But do you guys have any other thoughts on like any other body horror that you can use with these ones?
It might just be because I'm real fucked up, but I pictured like it just being ears connected like a butterfly.
Oh my god! Just like we're just gonna call them like ear butterflies.
Yeah.
Just like flap around, God. But like snap at you and like clasp, like bite onto you like an ear side. Yeah. Ew! No, it's like a hand, but it flies because it's got two ears.
Because it's got two ears that fly around.
Yeah,
it's
cute until
I'm sorry for that visual.
But like, so like, what is it? Alice in Wonderland has the butterflies made of pieces of toast. You know, like, and that's all I can think of in my head is like how cute and adorable those are. And so like, I can't.
It's that, but the opposite.
But frightening. But absolutely frightening.
Only we could make swarm of zombie limbs cute.
Yeah, it'd be a little cute.
How cute! So cute.
Like just little ear butterflies.
Oh gosh.
I hate.
My mind went to like swarm of rats. Like I imagine you hear that like rumbling kind of like ticking sound of, you know, fingernails or like little feet moving on the ground, and that can be the sound that kind of gets louder and louder, and then through a tiny hole that's in the cave or whatever, you just see these little hands like it or like thing just kind of merging through and then becoming this large ball that's rolling towards you of these limbs.
Yeah. Or you hear them in the walls like skittering across, and then they come through like the
whole
too, right?
Yeah.
Because it would also be terrifying though if it was just a ball of hair.
I also, when she said thing, I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was just like a mass of hair, just like
gross.
So I do gross. Like the idea of there like being a small crack that you have to go through, and that makes it so there's no way to go around these. Like you have to go through them to get to the other side, and they're just like crawling through it. I think that would be, and even like coming down so they can be hitting different party members and not just the person in front.
Yeah,
right. Dropping down a shoulder
because they do have a climbing speed, so they could be, you know, way up there and coming down as your party's trying to squeeze through, and you already have limited movement because you're like between two
in a tight
rock
space
walls.
Yeah. I also like that whole like Indiana Jones thing where the button is inside of a rock wall that you have to put your hand in that has like just an undead swarm of like bugs or something like that.
Just like comes out.
Yeah. Gross.
It could be teeth too, like it could be jaws, like an undead swarm of jaws.
I don't know why, but that's worse for me. I'm not teeth, like again, vanity bones are not my favorite thing about people. So I just can't even imagine.
It would be like those little like, you know, jaw toys that are on like little feet, just like
Ew.
The little wind up guys.
Gross.
Just all over the floor.
Just
like,
all over.
I hate it. I hate it so much. All right. Well, Casey says
it just got in her head there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go through a couple of like awesome other opportunities for zombies. I think what we've learned today about zombies is you can basically make anything into a zombie. Just get creative with it. But here's a couple of ones that you can find in a couple of different books. At first, I've got the Swarm of the Undead Snakes, which you can find in the Wildmount book. These are a CR of 2 with an AC of 14 and have a walking and swim speed of 30. They have below average in all stats except for dex, so these are your fast and agile zombies. They have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, and are immune to all things that a regular undead would be. And they have the ability to swarm, which we just talked about, the swarmings, which is the ability to occupy other people's spaces on that whole 9 yards. But they bite with a +6 to hit with a 7 average damage of piercing. And you also have to make a DC con of 10 or take 14 average poison damage and only half on a fail. So these would be really fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Just get nipped at by undead snakes. You know what I mean?
They're like, let's make snakes, but worse.
Yeah, but that's okay. Like, you can take anything and make it worse by making it a zombie, and these are kind of clues to that. We also have the Undead Boule, which is you can find in the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So these you come across. There's a little bit of a weird history to them in the Dungeons of the Mad Mage, which I did read a little bit about, but not too much. So don't come at me in the comments. But basically, there was a king that its greatest battles were fought against the Boulets, and then after defeating it, they reanimated it to serve as its undead guardian. So when you're fighting within the Dungeons of the Mad Mage, you will come across these, just kind of like strewn about in certain areas of the cavern. They are so if you can't picture what they are, it's basically like a large armadillo. I think it's the only way I could really describe it, that digs and burrows into the ground. They're a CR of 5 with a natural AC of 17 because, again, they look like an armored armadillo. As an undead, they jump from 95 hit points all the way up to 125, so their hit points increase when they become undead. And then they have a walking speed and a burrow speed of 40. So these are going to be your fast fucking zombies.
Nice.
Burrowing zombies just does not sound like a good time.
And it does actually say in the book that if they have nothing to attack, they will just burrow into the ground. So these things are going to be hiding underground, right? They have the same immunities that all undead have, except for a few cool attack abilities. They have the ability to bite, which gives an average of 30 piercing damage. They can jump and they can leap. They have something that's actually called the deadly leap, which it basically, if it jumps at least 15 feet, it can use an attack action to land on its feet in the space of another creature who must succeed on a strength or dex saving throw or be knocked prone and take bludgeoning damage. So these jump.
What's the CR on this?
CR 5. So like you're not necessarily going to want to fight these as a youngster, you know? Like
No.
They jump and they burrow.
They jump and burrow. And then if there's nothing left to fight, they just burrow underground.
They're like zombie whack-a-moles.
100%. Yeah. Like, so fucking cute. So cute. So cute.
Stop it.
I know. Also in the Dungeons of the Mad Mage, you can come across undead shambling mounds, which are basically just use the stat block of a regular shambling mound, but it is now undead, so has all the undead like capabilities. But a shambling mound, if you don't know what it is basically just a giant mass of plants. So this is like an undead plant that is alive.
It's like those zombie mushroom fungus things.
Yeah. So if you think of The Last of Us, this is what I imagine. Is like, this is your fungus, your spores, like that kind of thing is how I would use them in play. But like, an instance where they are a CR of, where's my notes? CR of 5 again, with an armor class of 15. They're sitting at about 136 hit points, so very similar to the Boule, but their swim and walk speed is only 20. I like how, as a plant, they have swim speed. Great. Love that for them.
Love it.
They're good with strength and con, but are below average in everything else. But they can stealth. They're skilled in stealth. Sneaky plants. Their resistance to cold. Yeah, right. On top of being undead, though, with their resistances and immunities, they are also resistant to cold and fire and immune to lightning. And they have condition immunities such as they cannot be blinded, deafened, or exhausted. Right? Interesting. We love that about them.
Yeah. I have fought shambling mounds that are like not undead, and they're pretty challenging. So an undead one,
because if you're just the regular shambling mounds, they have multi-attack where they can basically, slam with their limbs, but they can also engulf, which is like that they can grab you and grapple you, which we've in Adam's campaign. I feel like we fought many a shambling mound, and I've been many a times grappled by these motherfuckers. So I couldn't imagine the fact that I am now being attacked by one that is an undead version. So, all right, the next one I've got is the Undead Cockatrice, which is from the Acquisitions Incorporated book. So it's the same thing. It is just a regular like cockatrice, but it is undead now. And it doesn't seem that scary, but then I was like, it's just a bird. And then I looked up what an actual cockatrice is. So I've never fought one because I've never thought to. But they're actually quite scary. I mean, they are only a CR of like a half. They've got a half CR, so they seem quite simple. Armor class of 11. Their hit points are only 27. They have a walking speed of 20, but a fly speed of 40. And then they have a bite, though, that is a +3 to hit and only has like an average damage of like 3. So it's very simple piercing damage. But you have to make a DC Constitution saving throw of 11 or start becoming petrified.
Ooh, that's a new one.
Yeah. So you could be turned to stone. So within the Acquisitions Incorporated, they used a bunch of clues. Like you'd walk into a room that has a bunch of like stoned kobolds, like they've been turned petrified into stone or whatever, and they have these two cockatrices running around, kind of thing. And that's kind of like your clue that might happen to you. But in my head, I was like, I don't know why, but I did not think that, I guess maybe just I've never like looked up a cockatrice before, but I was like, I did not see that petrification coming. So could you imagine that like an undead one of these just running around petrifying everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Cool.
crazy.
Who
But
would have thought?
Right? But you are technically only petrified for 24 hours. So eventually you will become unpetrified. But like your team wouldn't know that. You know what I mean? So I'm imagining like one of your team members becomes petrified. It's a very like dramatic scene, and you're at the end of your day of your campaign, and your group continues on without you.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there like, those bitches left me behind.
Those bitches. Okay. With the petrification, you could use that as a way, like if you were a lich or whatever, to then get the limbs to create like the soul shaker or like the swarm of limbs. So then your party would just like, you'd wake up and not have a hand because they came and took it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because like we've come across this before, Casey, in a previous campaign, where we found petrified characters that we were able to unpetrify, but they had missing limbs. Not necessarily because of one of these, or like from undead grabbing limbs, but because of wear and tear. They've been underground and water runs, so like their limbs naturally just wore away.
Yeah.
But like this is much more horrifying because it's not that somebody will magically make that decision to unpetrify you and hopefully you can heal them. This is you will eventually wake up and you won't have limbs. Yeah. Like
and then would you still have like a connection to those limbs? And then your party would have to go and find this like soul shaker or whatever to try and get your specific limb back and find like a greater restoration to reconnect you and make you whole.
Can we just say that there's somewhere around there's one of these like limb mobs that just has the hand of Vecna in it, and that's where you have to get it, is you have to kill one of these to get the hand of Vecna.
Yeah.
That's
and the eye of Vecna too. Is it like the eyeball wart? Yeah. But you don't know which one it is.
You don't know which one. You have to like
slam an eyeball
all of them.
Slamming eyeballs in your head trying to figure out which one is it.
Like, what do I see?
Oh my god.
Or there's just a town of people without eyes, like without missing one eye, and that's the eye that's in the ball.
Yeah. Oh my god. I hate it so much. Oh, all right, but one last time. Let's raise some dice to these random zombie hordes.
19.
15.
5.
I
had one good roll and I panicked.
All right, Peps, when would you or how would you use these in your campaign? Or would you use any of these?
Yeah, I think that I would use them. And I think, like we said, these sort of give you permission to take anything and make it undead. The snakes, I think I think they all give like a fun flavor to it, as they all sort of move and do different things. Like the snakes and the Shaling Mound have a swim speed. The cockatrice has a flying speed. Like flying undead things that can petrify you is horrifying. So I would, and a lot of people are afraid of snakes, so I think that makes it even worse. Like if you have a player that doesn't like snakes and doesn't like zombies, and just combining the two of them and making it absolutely horrible, I think would be a lot of fun as a DM. Not so much as a player, but
Adam does this all the time, and I was going to mention it when I just take whatever your player has a fear of, which mine unfortunately is spiders, and make it undead and make it a swarm, and it's just like, fuck you. Like I remember the first day I played D&D with Adam, it was a table covered in spider minis, and I was like, what am I even doing here? Like I never wanted that.
Why do I talk to you? Yeah.
Why are we friends? But no, I agree. I feel like these kind of bode and go into the fact that you could really take any creature and make it an undead one. Would I use a cockatrice? Yes, but I would want to figure out why it's there. You know what I mean? So like this is like the cockatrice in the Acquisitions Incorporated is very specific to that lore and that campaign. Like, I would have to figure out a reason why it's there. I wouldn't just randomly throw it into my players and be like, here's a random undead cockatrice. No, like, I feel like there's a reason why it exists. There's a reason why there's boulets here. There's a reason why. So I feel like if you're a DM and you want to use these, keep that in mind. Like, it is fun to make all these random, like a shambling mound. There's probably going to be undead plants everywhere. That's an easy one to place in. But these random weird animals, it's like, why are they here? What is their history, right? Like, that's something you really want to think about as a DM when you're plopping these into your campaign, right?
I could see like an undead shambling mound being used for like a black Dracolich, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
Because I have to bring a dragon into it somehow.
100%. There it is. We did it, Peps.
We did it.
We did it. Oh man, what about you, Casey? Would you use these?
Yeah, I think I'm really glad we covered these because I, to be honest, didn't know about any of them until we talked about them. So I think it just gives a little bit more creativity for when you're building a campaign and maybe you want to integrate undead, but you don't necessarily want to just throw the zombie and zombie horde or zombie variants as everyone expects them to be at your characters, unless it's a Dracolich. But these are pretty cool. I like them a lot. And I think, like you said, Megan, you got to use them maybe more specifically, or else it might just seem a bit ridiculous. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing saying that you can't do that. But like, you darn well know one character's gonna be like, this doesn't make any sense. They'd be like, well, it was flown here by a pelican. I don't know what your problem is. All right, Peps, what's the most horrifying detail to lean into with one of these? What's your favorite one?
My favorite one. I really think the petrification of the cockatrice is probably the best or the most horrifying. You know, like I said, you could use that as a way to gather limbs for your other, you know, soul shaker and ball of limbs and things like that. So I think that would be a really good one to use. And you just walk in and there's all these statues, but they're all missing one, like the left hand, you know, or something like that. I think is probably going to be your most useful way to go.
Agreed. I mean, like the petrification again, like that's what I feel like you can use the most creative to like horrify your team by like using backstories and things like that, taking their limbs, leaving them behind, like all that kind of shit. But I don't know, the idea of a giant armadillo boule scares the fuck out of me.
That's
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that it's burrowing. So like, again, if there's nothing for it to fight or do, it's going to be burrowed. So you're going to walk into a room, not know that it's there. To your point, it's whackable. All of a sudden, you're going to step on something or you're going to move, or your paladin who's heavy footed is going to just get nipped in the foot. You know what I mean? And then like, or it's just going to leap out and like jump on someone. And then
I'm getting like complete Tremors vibes for this.
Yes, absolutely. And you can use that in the exploration, right? You kind of hear like the rumblings under your feet, and sometimes you just feel a slight shaking, and then all of a sudden it's like, ow, it's out of nowhere. What about you, Casey?
Yeah, that's what I love too. And yes, you could do that inside somewhere, but you could also do it out in nature. Like I'm thinking like gophers too, where you might come across the remnants of like a burrow where one of the boulets went down into the ground, but you might not really discern what exactly it is. It's like, ooh, that's concerning. What you would never expect is that it is an undead creature doing that. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is true, because a lot of zombies, you know, in the base zombie stat, if there's nothing for it to do, it just stands still.
Yeah.
So for it to think to dig down is way beyond your base zombie stat.
Yeah, and I think lots of these do give the ability to have more clues of what's happening, because they're a little bit more specific, a little bit more unique, like the statues or like the burrowing holes or things like that. Or so you kind of can drop a few more clues as the players are getting closer to that area. Yeah,
I love it. We talked about strategies and tactics, but do we have a single unique combat tactic that makes these alternatives different from the average zombie? What makes them feel different, Peps?
I think they all have a little bit more personality than your average zombie, honestly. You know, like we said, the its ability to think, to burrow, to hide, you know, that is not something a base zombie would do. The cockatrice's, you know, ability to think, to petrify them, and to fly, and a base zombie is just going to walk in a straight line. So for them to be able to move in different ways, I think I would use a lot for these, because some of them can swim, some of them can climb, some of them can burrow, some of them can fly, and I think that is definitely a tactic you can use that you cannot use with a just base average zombie.
Yeah, I think the movements and the different types of movement, it's definitely something that makes them a little bit different. Because now I just thought in my head, could you imagine your cockatrice, which can fly, grabs the small gnome character, flies away, petrifies it, and drops him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, fuck, dude.
Yeah.
And like, it's just what else these are. They seem so simple, and yet you just add a little bit of that fright factor to it, or that grotesqueness, or that body horror to them, and it just makes them so much more wildly interesting. Because the only way to make a traditional like humanoid style zombie interesting is to throw in characters' backstories, like make it someone's parent, make it someone's friend, make it something that they're connected to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then mix in the body horror. These ones are frightening because they can run faster. They are frightening because they can swim, even though you jump into the water. Because everyone's first thought of when you jump, when a zombie attack is happening, is go into the water because zombies can't swim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but zombie snakes can.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like, woo. But Casey, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think we came full circle. It's kind of, I think we all generally leaned into the most horrifying is the fast ones. Like that's what's scary when it's outside of your typical what you expect the lumbering, slow, scary zombie to be. That brings the horror. And so all of these would bring that. Like, imagine even knowing that there's some sort of like snake lair that you have to go through in some swamps, or you're forced to cross a river that is known to inhabit snakes. So it's like, okay, fine. Like, we just got to do this. Let's just accept we may encounter snakes. And even at the first glance, when you see perhaps snakes coming up the river at you, you will not think they are undead snakes. And so as a DM, I think that opens up the whole thing. It's like, wait, what other encounters could I do and just make it undead?
Yeah, like you're coming up to your Lich's tower, and you're like walking through the river, and it's just full of undead snakes.
Yeah.
I just had the idea with all these like animal and your shambling mounds and stuff. I think if you're going liches, these would be your druid liches that would use these versus your regular humanoid zombies. I think they would lead more into so I would use these with your I said it wrong the whole episode.
The lichens.
The lichens.
The lichen liches.
The lichen liches.
The lichen liches.
The lichen liches. No, the lichen liches, absolutely.
The lichen liches.
You're going through the forest, and this is where you're going to find your undead shambling mounds, your undead snakes, like your undead like creatures, right? Your animals.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, no, I hear that. That's really cool.
So on a scale of 1 to 10 braids, how would you rank these zombies as a part of the undead landscape in D&D 5th edition?
All
right. So we have our regular zombie. Where would we put them?
I'm giving them a 4.
A 4?
4 brains. Boring.
4 brains.
Still frightening, but boring.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 4 or 5. Like, they're average, middle of the road. You still don't want to come up against zombies.
No. You still want to fight them. I just find them boring. So I'm going to put a below average assault.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. After doing all of this research and learning about all the other ones, I'm like, there are 2.
Yeah.
Fuck you guys.
All right. The zombie Clot, which was the big one made of all the other zombies.
The fact that it can throw a piece at you and gelatinous cube you in the face, I'm going to give these guys a solid 8. I do not like these. And they're giant. Like, you have to remember they're giant. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So 8 for the zombie Clot. Soul Shaker.
I get it. Like, it's to me, they're frightening, but not as frightening as the zombie Clot itself. So I'm going to give these a 7.
7.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that could speak to you, though, right?
They have the telepathy. These are the magical ones.
I think that makes them a little bit scarier because they are the only ones that could really fuck with you mentally, I think.
It's true.
So I would give them a bonus point and put them on the same as the Clot for me.
Clot and Soul Shaker on the same line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys got me all fucked up with the sanity stuff on these ones. So I'm edging them to like a 9. Like, I think it would be how the DM plays it out. It could just be a nasty, scary, more magical zombie variant that you throw at your players. But when you guys have like went into detail on the horrific backstory connections, it's like, fuck me. I don't know. Yeah, I would be really scared as a player to recognize these.
7 to 9 based on how fucked up the DM is.
Yeah, how fucked up your DM is, 7 to 9.
All right. The zombie plague spreader.
I would give these a 9. And the only reason why I would is because these are your village flatteners, you know?
Yeah.
These are the core and the creation of what you are going to be fighting. Because not only is it going to create regular zombies, it can create like snake zombies. It can create like horse zombies. Like, anything that is alive and then dies in its area is going to be zombified in my mind. So again, these are your village levelers. So I would give them a solid 9. If I knew I was coming up against one of these, I'd be like, crap, I'm not just fighting this. I'm going to fight whatever it's killed.
Right. And I think these are harder to control than like your regular zombie. Those are being controlled by a thing. I think once it gets to the plague spreader, that I think whatever like necromancer that has created those zombies has sort of lost control of them once it gets to that level.
Right. And like, I imagine if these are the generals of the zombie army that some lich or some necromancer is making, like, holy shit, that is terrifying. Because it's going to be chaotic. It's going to get out of control. And the lich or necromancer might not even give a shit. Probably won't give a shit. But it will then be the adventuring party's problem to try and figure out how to stop it, contain it. Yeah. Very dangerous. Yes. And this one is one of the ones that also gives that slow burn or that foreshadowing with how we talked about it, the infection, the latent infection that shows up long after they have moved through.
Yeah. So because you can get rid of the necromancer, but these things are beyond that at this point because it's the disease carrying it, not the magic.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually going to rate them more like a little bit above average, but I think I'm convinced it's probably an 8 or 9.
Yeah. The swarm of zombie limbs. I think a 7 for me.
Yeah, I mean, they're scary and I'm not a fan of them, but like, I'm not, if I saw it, I would just kick it. You know what I mean? Like,
you just gotta stay out of its square.
Yeah, at average, I would say like 4 or 5.
Because its only attacks have to be in your square. So I think if you could just, like, if you're a monk with 120 feet of movement, like, you can stay out of their square pretty easily.
Yeah.
Or just fly through it.
Yeah, just keep running. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah. All right. The swarm of undead snakes.
We hate them. I hate them.
We hate them.
And not just because they're snakes, because they're indicative that you can make any like swarming type of creature into a undead swarm. And I think that's what makes me hate them more. Is that, like, if it's snakes, then what else is there? You know?
Yeah.
So.
I think it's on the scale of the sort of undead animals that we got into. I think they're probably one of the lower ones for me, though. So I would put them at maybe a 6.
Yeah, as snakes stand alone, I'd give it about a 5, give it about a 5 or 6. I keep it in the middle. But if you threw like spiders at me, I'd be like, okay, that's a solid 10. Like,
All right. Casey, where would you put them?
Below average. I'm not scared of snakes, so maybe that influences my decision too. They will be maybe slightly above a regular zombie just because of that swim speed. But 3 or 4 for me.
The undead boule. Is that boule?
Boule.
This is my first time saying that word.
I Googled it because I didn't really know. I was like, boulette? Boulette?
Boule.
No, it's boule.
Boule. All right, the undead boule.
I don't know.
I think those definitely above the snakes with the whack-a-mole sort of feature. So maybe 7 for me.
I was gonna do 6 because then it's kind of like, because I did 5 for snakes, or like so I feel like it would be like a 6 for me, just because I don't think it's as scary as a clot or a shaker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm putting these around a 7. I think they're quite a bit more dangerous and challenging than the undead snakes. Just with that like armor. I believe, if I remember correctly, they had quite a higher AC than like many other things that you would fight that are undead that we talked about. So
They also had like the 30, I think it was an average of 30 piercing damage with its like
that was
those
it
ones
too.
were rough.
Yeah.
All right, the Undead Shambling Mound.
Grappling trees, that's a 10 for me. Full stop.
Full stop. We know you
Would
love
these
the
be
grappling.
above the boule? No, for me, they're like a 5.
Yeah, I think they'd be on snake level for me.
Good for you guys.
All right, and the Undead Cockatrice.
That's like a 9 for me, man.
Yeah.
A bird that can petrify you and then is undead and all of these things that can fly and just like there's so much you can do with them. It's so weird. Yeah.
My mind went to whichever Jurassic Park or Jurassic World that was, where they ended up in the giant cage of the flying birds. And oh my god, I can't remember the name. What are the well, anyway. But imagine if they were stuck in there and you walked in and you were in a giant cage of undead cockatrice.
It's like was their enclosure at one point, and you just walked into their enclosure or whatever. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's like where the liches.
It took me a minute too. Sorry, the pterodactyls. That's what
pterodactyls. That's it.
Yeah. Ew.
Yes, 9 for sure.
We don't like flying undead birds, is what I'm getting from this from you ladies.
You know, I just generally don't like things that can fly at me. Just like I've been to butterfly houses and everybody else is very chill and I'm like flinching. Like I just don't like things that can fly at me.
I went to like one of those bird sanctuaries and I'm the same. As soon as one moves, when it's too close to me, it freaks me right out.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not a fan. It just moves too fast and at my face and I'm not a fan.
Good to know, Peps. Good to know.
Yeah. So don't put flying zombie ears at me, please.
I'm gonna make you as flying zombie ear like sculpture or something for you.
Yeah, that's an art fan art opportunity right there.
Yeah. I can imagine doing like do a cast with someone's hand and then a cast with someone's ears and like to make it look like super realistic.
All right, somebody draw that and put it on Reddit for us.
Someone fan art that for us, thank you. And then we'll write up the stat block and then make tons of money off of it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, now it's time to close the crypt on this part of our conversation on Undead and D&D 5th edition. Stay tuned next month when we rise up to haunt you again with even more terrors from beyond the grave, mummies.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website at www.itsamimic.com. And if you'd like to discuss what you've heard here today, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and at r/itsamimic. For other episodes on other kinds of monsters, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. Boom.
Amazing. Phenomenal.
Love it.
I am inspired and sick to my stomach for the rest of the day.
You know what? I have so many freaking ideas for like even just my L5R campaign from these that I want to like customize. Sorry about it, Casey, but like it seems so great.
Yeah, so I get it. Yeah, they're good.
I'm excited to use some of these next week in my Cthulhu game.
Yeah,
yes, you got to keep us posted on that because that is exciting.
Yeah, no, I love it. Do they have like undead like this in like Call of Cthulhu, like as per like mechanic written, or do you pull from other? Mechanics?
Yeah, in the Keeper handbook there are like zombies and stuff in there, which I very briefly read. Need to do more prep. A lot of my Cthulhu games I've like made up the monsters, so just sort of whatever.
So you're winging DM.
I'm just winging it. I'm winging it. So some of this will probably show up.
Love that. Great.
Very fun.
Cool. I'm going to stop the recording.
There's a few interesting ones. So one being stealthy stench. No. What am I reading?
Gross.
Let me try that again.
That's like silent but deadly.
So, you know?
Yeah.
New phrase.
That's what I'm calling it now. Stealthy Stitch.
Stealthy Stitch. Kills me.
Oh my gosh, there's not been enough coffee this morning.
There we go.